What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we got the second skill reveal trailer for the hero for the rate up on the 30th with the 1.52 update. It's of course nobody else but Nazrik. Nazrik, we already know from the story, famous hunter with his spear that can track enemies, so will definitely be a rather interesting choice for the rate up. I wonder if he can actually save the Mauler faction. Why do I say it like that? Well, I was thinking about it and I was wondering because they only in the trailer recommended Wilder heroes to combine with them. I was like, well, it's kind of bad. Where are the Mauler heroes? And looking into the Mauler faction, yeah, now that I think about it, this seems rather mid. There are really no longer that many characters that see a lot of play. Xandrock as a new hero, of course, Sharky has always seen a little bit of play. But if you look through the rows, like Mikola, very little. Kruger still, because he has some nice debuffs, but that's only a matter of time until he gets replaced. Reese, Brutus, and all the others, well, rarely any. So definitely could use a good hero coming to the Mauler faction. Let's see if he's any good. And again, we of course have a trailer that you can find down in the description if you want to watch it. Other than that, we are going to do a little bit of a reaction, so let's go.
A good hunter always improves.
I know a thing or two about hunting.
Starting off base stats, Mauler marksman, so same as Odie, interestingly enough. Physical damage and a range of 7, so an absolutely enormous range that should be more than enough for this guy to probably not move too much from his initial starting position, which is a rather interesting thing. It's usually pretty good if you have a range like this on a long range hero. Then again, well, Mauler doesn't really have too many long-range heroes or any supports for them, really. So that's already in itself, well, a bit of something new. They have been molded a lot more into the direction of a melee type faction. We saw this in the recent season skills. Last season skills specifically promoting using it on melee heroes because it would block off range damage. And this season we got the Wolf, also kind of a melee hero. So no wonder they see the supports for him more in other factions.
So I do see his point. They say Nazrik's spear can track its prey anywhere. I wonder how it would fare against my shield. Nazrik seems cold.
And this is exactly what I meant if we go a little bit back. Nazrik specialized in Dream Realm and Arena. So this time a Dream Realm hero, very interesting. But the synergies, Elijah Layla, of course, twins, makes sense. And then we have Laika, Theodore and Lenya, all from the Wilder faction. And this part had me confused. And I criticized that because I said, well, when we get a new hero and you can't even find proper heroes with synergies in the same faction as him, well, that is in itself kind of bad, because always you try, of course, to go for the right faction aura, meaning it is general promoted in the game to use a hero either together with Celestial and Hypogean units or with heroes from the same faction. If you want to put a hero from a faction different than the rest of the team into that team, it has to have more value comparable to a hero from the same faction that you are already placed in your team. So if you combine with Laika, Theodore and Lenya, you are in general incentivized to use a Wilder unit instead, or a Hypogean or Celestial unit. And if you use Nazrik in that team, Nazrik has to be better in comparison because he has to make up for the loss of faction aura that you bring with it, or in case of like the season skill or faction Phantomal in that sense. It has to make up for the lack of diversity that you can use, because you have to use then the 3 Wilder heroes and are a little bit stuck on it. So that in itself is a little bit of a disadvantage, I would say.
Seems cold. He's not exactly the friendly type from what I've seen. So maybe I'll just watch how he moves when he's on the hunt. And the hunt starts now. After the battle has gone on for a while, Nazrik marks the enemy who has taken the most cumulative damage as his prey. Nazrik will target the prey first when using his skills. When Nazrik casts his ultimate, he hurls a hunting spear with a guaranteed critical hit, dealing heavy damage to an enemy. After a short delay, he detonates the rend stacks on that enemy, with each stack dealing extra damage. The Herdmaster gave Nazrik his tracking power, the very source of his strength. Any critical hit from Nazrik's spear throws, be it a normal attack or a skill, does extra damage based on the enemy's max health. It also permanently lowers their max health by the same amount. But against bosses, This effect deals true damage instead of reducing their max health.
Okay, I wanted to put those two skills together, the Savage Wound together with the ultimate skill. The ultimate skill starts off with a passive part that is rather interesting. We can go back to it over here. We have it right there. Wait a second. Right at the beginning. A few seconds into the battle, Nazrik marks the enemy who's taken the most cumulative damage as his prey. So, first of all, this is a rather good skill because we want to have single target and we want to, of course, have one enemy that we really strike down on. It's the enemy with the most cumulative damage. So, in the same manner as you have like in Athalia, he also tends to prioritize the enemy with the highest cumulative damage dealt. With the difference that he basically takes a snapshot at that second. So what do I mean by that? Athalia will always reassess who she's targeting whenever she uses one of her skills. So meaning if you have a hero that dealt a lot of damage at the beginning of the fight, Athalia will target that hero. If she then consecutively casts another skill, she might redirect that skill to another hero that surpassed the cumulative damage dealt of the first hero within that time span. That commonly happens with heroes that have a lot of burst damage at the beginning of the fight. So let's say, for example, Siren. Siren has an ability, it's his second ability, I believe, that hurls 3 magic orbs at the enemy. Those magic orbs have splash damage, and when the enemies are close together, which they are usually at the beginning of the fight in many maps, then that tends to deal a ton of damage. So Athalia will often target Siren at the beginning of the fight. But then other heroes, for example a Diana, will slowly surpass Siren, because after its initial ability cast, the relative damage of Siren is low, while the sustained damage that Diana can do throughout this time span is higher. So that will surpass, that means Diana will surpass Siren in the cumulative damage dealt. So the first hit will be on Siren, the second hit will be on Diana. So she spreads it out in such situations, which is usually quite good, because it means you can distract her less easily from your main damage dealer. So when you have a Dynel or Cryonaya that are rather ult dependent and that you want to ult, you can't just distract the enemy Athalia with Siren, because Siren will just do the highest damage for a few seconds and then fall off compared to Dynel or Cryonaya. So she will usually do her normal skills on the Siren and her ult on the Cryonaya, which is devastating. The question now, and that is what I wanted to go for, is what's Nazrik going to do? Is he going to go ahead and really do his mark at like the beginning of the fight, rather early on? Then he might just target a Siren. Or will he do it a few seconds later? Really, the timing here on this is the most important piece, because this might decide whether or not you can distract him or you can't, and whether or not he's really going to get your big damage dealer, which is probably the thing that you would want. The damage itself on this is rather interesting. It is partly this, that we have the guaranteed critical hit. We will have a mechanical rend a bit later. It seems to be a big damage hit in the same manner as Athalia, so that is fairly good. Guaranteed critical hit means you usually want to go for crit damage boost, which we'll find later on in one of his skills. Then we have, of course, whenever he lands a critical hit, with a spear throw from his normal attacks or skills, which would also count in his ult. He have extra damage based on target's max HP, which will probably be kept, and reduced by max HP. And of course, against bosses, we see that this is then true damage. So also a true damage hero, which means we have some potential. Definitely, I would say that this guy could be good. The main part of his damage still fist damage. So the question really is whether or not he can outshine Chimera in this, which I'm not sure, but we saw a lot of fights with secondary damage dealers, sometimes even from other factions in this season. So maybe there is a chance. Could be fairly interesting to see that. For PvP, we don't really have a tanky season yet. Even Packbound did not change the meta in that way. It's still fairly bursty. And I think by the time you set up the damage, your hero is probably gone. Just like you wouldn't necessarily go for just the ult from Athalia. If Athalia were for just her ult, which he kind of seems to be, then that would not be enough to really make her a great hero. And like budget Athalia, which is kind of the ult he has, I'm not sure if that's going to cut it. I don't see yet enough power here to cut it. But he's an interesting choice for Mauler, which, as I said, has limited choices.
Instead of reducing their max health. On top of that, Every critical hit from Nazrik's spear throws, whether from normal attacks or skills, adds extra Rend stacks, up to a specific limit. Rend cannot be dispelled, and any enemy affected takes damage when they use their ultimate, depending on how many stacks they have. Nazrik's presence alone can be intimidating. He can also target the enemy who's been healing their allies the most, throwing a spear that stuns them for a few seconds.
So this is a really cool one. Actually, we don't have too many skills specifically targeting healers. Targeting has mostly been based on damage in this game. The two heroes that come to mind when I think about other targeting would actually be Sinbad, who has his different marks that he puts on different enemies. And then we have Khafra, actually. And some people were confused that I had a Crown Khafra on my account, which is kind of funny. But I still think he has a chance to be good if he gets a nice Supreme Plus ability. But he also targets the enemies that heal other enemies. So that is fairly interesting. Here we see a stun. That could be blocked, of course, if the enemy is unaffected, which Ludovic is at the beginning of the battle. And then we reduce their healing for a while, blocking that off. So that could be something that would be really good. If it's good enough for PvE remains to be seen. It has to be compared to other sources of blocking heal, specifically Satrana and Igor, I would say.
Spear also cuts the enemy's healing for a while. Once Nazrik has you in his sights, there's no escape. After unlocking his exclusive skill, when other allies land a critical strike on his prey, they also inflict a stack of Rend. Each ally can inflict at most 1 Rend stack per second this way.
So this is really cool. This could mean that he has great synergy with crit-based heroes. They have some interesting choices there. We have Vala and we have Lenya. Lenya has very nice crit boosts in her skills. So that could be fairly interesting. The question, of course, that remains is how much damage does Rend really do? It is kind of sad that that is limited to 1 per second. I would have imagined some build with a lot of attack speed, stacking up a ton of hits from like a Lenya, making it hit a ton. That would be very, very cool. But the problem I see would be that Lenya already innately has a ton of skills, a ton of hits in her skills. So if you kind of combine that then with something like a Leica that boosts attack speed, maybe some other sources of it, maybe introduce twins to the whole formula, you could probably get a ton of crits per second on an enemy, so they limited it, which is a little bit sad. But still, nonetheless, we have 4 allies on the board. They could all crit, they could hit multiple enemies, so it is heavily incentivized to boost his crit in this scenario, which you have some options of, but they are fairly limited. I think the biggest one right now would be Theta. And then we really have to see what else we can do. If it's on seasonal charms, I'm actually not too sure. So quickly checked, for some heroes we do have the combative charm, and this actually includes haste and crit, so this would be very good as a synergy with that. Or we can go for the butcher charm, which has crit and crit damage boost, but this is not really available for all the heroes. For Lenya we have it, which is really, really nice. If we go for something like an Odie here, we can see that the same 2 charms are not available, so this seems to depend on the class of the hero. And here we don't have any crit boost. We do have some interesting ones here nonetheless. We have some crit damage boost charms. Which one was that? Oh, give me a second. I saw it. No, this is attack speed. So I was stupid, I was looking on Sharke before. He has the crit damage boost. Interestingly enough, Odie doesn't have it, and Odie is of course also a marksman, so probably that means that we won't have access to it, so that means maybe attack speed is the best one, or a skill power or something. But reducing crit resist is interesting too, because that is one of the defensive stats. We don't see many interactions with it. What does crit resist do? It actually reduces your chance to crit the enemy. So if an enemy has a high crit resist, which in generally they do, so you see something like a 300% crit resist, and that works then against their crit, which is like 342%. So in an interesting way, they have like super high crit percent, but it always works against super high crit resist. So if we reduce the crit resist, that works basically as crit chance for any hero hitting that enemy. So even something like 15% reduced crit resist could be very substantial, because that would work out for 15% more crit for anybody hitting that hero. So very, very good actually.
He earned his reputation as the strongest warrior. Once he marks an enemy as his prey, he'll hunt them down with all his might. The critical hits from both his normal attacks and skills will deal extra damage to the prey, reducing their max health and stacking rend. Every critical hit from Nazrik's allies adds more rend to the prey. Finally, when Nazrik unleashes his ultimate, he hurls a spear that's guaranteed to land a critical hit, then detonates all rend stacks on the target for a devastating blow. So here's how a real hunt plays out. Nazrik marks his prey, making it easier for allies to land critical hits. He then keeps the pressure on with his skills and normal attacks, stacking rend with every critical hit.
So the question here is, of course, well, for PvP, it's kind of tough. We don't really need damage boost in most scenarios. For the most part, we just deal enough damage in PvP already. It's more about creating scenarios in which you can defeat the enemy, which, for example, a Pandora giving energy to a Chimera, creating a scenario where you have a super fast ult. You can't really stack up anything within the 4-second time frame. That is just that something like rend is inconsequential in a short bursty meta. If we have teams that survive for a longer time, that is another story that could be more interesting. But if I hear like a debuff to crit resist, I'm not really thinking about PvP. It's more that I think about, well, is he an interesting hero to maybe pair with something like a Chimera? Is that really the interesting part here, that we have a hero who maybe doesn't outdamage Chimera, but has enough damage to make him worthwhile in the team, on top of giving us this crit resist debuff, which just allows Chimera to do more critical hits on a boss. So that could be the interesting part here. On top of then stacking some rend, maybe allowing even some of our support heroes to crit, giving us more rend, in turn more damage, and that all working out for him to be a high value unit in Dream Realm. That could be the interesting part, I think.
With the right support, Nazrik's fighting spirit will soar. He will rain down spears, dominating the battle, until the rend explosion finishes the job in a flash. And just like that, the hunt is over. As I've heard more stories about Nazrik, I'm starting to see the person behind that cold look. For example, a master hunter like him hardly ever eats meat. And his...
So very, very interesting unit. I think not to be overlooked at all, could potentially be a meta choice for Dream Realm. I don't see him in PvP in this current meta. I don't want to say he will never be in PvP, but I don't see him in PvP right now. Because right now is a fast PvP, and stacking up stuff, you need a slow PvP for that. So that is a question. Lastly, we already made a similar build with Mehira, not Shim. Now I'm confused, bloody hell. With Mehira yesterday, asking one last question that I want to kind of go into when we review him. The question for me that is most decisive really is the question, how much crit resist debuff can he apply? So how impactful that really is. If this is a small debuff, that is of course not that interesting. If it's a big debuff, we might look at a support role in Dream Realm. And then of course the question, how much damage does rend really do? If we can stack up a lot of it and it's worthwhile and it does big damage, then of course we might see teams around it. If not, well, then not really. But definitely an interesting hero. Can't wait to summon him. Will be a little bit of a tough rate up because, well, we already have the announcement that we get the collab at the end of the month, so I'm definitely saving up gems for that. But nonetheless, I have some rate ups stored up. So if you want to see me summon this guy and test him, then I would suggest you subscribe to the channel. Other than that, still one last word. make sure you click the link in the description where you find the link to LD Shop. LD Shop will provide you with the cheapest dragon crystals on the market. You just go to the website through my link down in the description. Use it every time, please, if you want to support the channel when you want to buy something. They don't save it somehow. And you can save up to 15% and 5%. We get 2 coupons if you register an account through link in the description. And then on top of that, they give you a huge discount on the dragon crystals. Anyway, it's really not worth buying it in-game at all. Just go through LD Shop. Definitely recommend it. Other than that, I wish you a great day. I will see us in the next one.